Hello my friend and welcome to this video. Now this is a video that I'm going to be doing something that people have been asking for a lot on TikTok, but it would be like 15 videos if I tried to do it on TikTok, or they'd be 3-minute videos and nobody watches those. So here on YouTube, where we have extended attention spans, I feel like I can really get into this. So what is the list that everyone is clamoring for me? Well, it's the obvious one. What are my top 10 books? So while I have tried to put these in order, just know that the order of these books has fluctuated over the years, will continue to fluctuate. Things might get bumped as new works enter the list. And if you don't see one of your favorite books that I've talked about on TikTok or just at all, just know I probably haven't gotten to it. It's still okay that it's one of your favorite books. These are just my favorite books. So we're starting things off at number 10 with a non-fiction book, which is not exactly something that I'm known for, but honestly I'm going to start sort of expanding into a little bit. I'm going to try and I found my niche on TikTok, and I'm trying to find more niches so that I can be more of a well-rounded person in the content that I'm putting out, and not just me going and holding up books the whole time. Realizing now that I've just kind of given away what the number 10 spot is. So here it is. It is The Cave and the Light by Arthur Herman, and it is, like I said, a non-fiction work. Now, The Cave and the Light is super interesting because it is a breakdown of the sort of lineage of Western philosophy, starting with Plato and Aristotle. From the early days of the two Greek philosophers, Herman does a really good job of sort of like breaking down like what the main differences between the two of them are, mainly that Aristotle is more based in the here and now, like the earth. He points out that in the famous painting, The School of Athens, Aristotle here is pointing down to the ground, while Plato here is pointing up to the heavens. And that is a really interesting sort of visual representation of the dichotomy between the two thinkers. From there, Herman goes through the sort of like lineage of Western philosophy and sort of sorts everyone into family trees based on who they align with more. If they're more of like a metaphysical, like almost mystical thought person, I am clearly not a word person, then they sort of get sorted into Plato's family. But if they are more empirical data, more scientific, if you will, if you can really even like ascribe scientific to philosophy a lot of the time, I can hear Neil deGrasse Tyson somewhere going, "Oh, philosophy, it's bad, it's not science, I have a mustache." What is my life? Then they get sorted into Aristotle's family. The book really does a great job sort of contextualizing everything that you see in the world around you within the realm of philosophy, and for that I highly recommend it, and that's why it gets my number 10 spot. Now number 9 is something that I haven't talked about quite yet on TikTok. It's coming in the next couple days for like a proper review on there, but it's a book that, while not being the most influential book in the world, or it did win the Pulitzer Prize, but no one's really talked about it since then. It left quite an impact on me, and that is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. The book is really interesting because it tracks the life, the brief wonderful life, if you will, of its main character Oscar, growing up as an overweight, nerdy Latino. Now, while I can't identify with a lot of the aspects of Oscar's personality personally, I can identify with the bullying in this novel, but also trying to remain true to who you really are in the face of the world telling you that that is bad. And man, the ending. Oh man, yeah. This one, number 9, it's gonna end up on sad books soon. I'll leave it at that. Just a quick addendum to Oscar Wilde as well. There is quite a bit of sexism in the book. It is not something that I believe is a character flaw in Junot Diaz. I don't believe he is a sexist individual, but for him to be authentic in the storytelling, there are a lot of characters in his book that are. We definitely can't ascribe the actions of characters to their author. That would be insane, and that's going to be important for a book coming up later on. Next up at number 8 is a book that I said has already sort of laid the claim to being the best novel of the 21st century, and I still stand by that, and that is 2666 by Roberto Bolaño. Man, what can be said about 2666 that hasn't already been said about Going 10 Rounds with Mike Tyson? It's brutal, violent, leaves you feeling broken at the end, but man, the technical skill that goes into the beating, let me tell you, it's something to behold. So the novel is broken up into 5 sections that all sort of tell interweaving stories that happen in the Mexican province of Santa Teresa and the backdrop of everything that's happening. And there are a lot of more disparate stories happening. So there's like a group of literature critics that are looking for a famed German author who is hiding out in this town, allegedly. There's a journalist who's covering a boxing match. But all of these are sort of like cast against the backdrop of these horrific crimes that are happening in Santa Teresa, where dozens of, well, actually hundreds of women are going missing and just being brutalized. It is not a novel for the faint of heart. While it doesn't get very, let's say, graphic, like there's no delineation of the sexual assaults that happen in this book, but at the same time, it is relentless and it is brought up often and plays a very central role to much of what's happening in the novel. So if you cannot handle that, please steer clear of this novel. While it is a fantastic novel, I don't want anyone to be like, oh, Jen said this book was great, so time to traumatize myself. That's not what I want. I want people to find novels that they love, not to hurt themselves. Taking a real big moral stand there, Jen. Good job. All right, next up at number 7, I've lost count, but let's go with 7. Next up at number 7 is the only poetry that's going to appear on this list, but it's so good. It's so good. More people need to read it. And that is Said the Shotgun to the Head by Saul Williams. Saul Williams is a impressive individual. He's done so much in his career, and pretty much all of it has been like good to great. He's a poet. Between Said the Shotgun to the Head, She, and the Dead MC Scrolls, like he is so good at lyric poetry, like incredible. His music, up until I would say about his Volcanic Sunlight album, that's when there was a notable decline in, I believe, the quality of his music. But Amethyst Rockstar, his self-titled, and then The Inevitable Rise and Liberation of a name I'm not going to say because I'm pale. His music is so good. Those 3 albums are like close to perfect in my opinion. And The Inevitable Rise and Liberation is produced by Trent Reznor, which is a huge plus in my book. Said the Shotgun to the Head, this is my 3rd or 4th copy of this book because every time I let someone borrow this thing, they steal it. They keep it for themselves. I remember once in college, I lent it to a girl that I was crushing on, and she was like, oh, I just need to hold on to this. I want to make some of these like Facebook statuses or AIM statuses or something like that. And I never saw the book again. God, there's so much done in this poem. Like, holy goodness. From the text being laid out in ways that help really emphasize the points that are being made, to just incredible images, turns of phrase, like just turning to a random page. This is a random page. I have found the library where all the dreams deferred were stored, catalogs of cultures indexed by communal disappearance. Mayans are metaphors for astral doors left cracked by children unafraid to sleep in utter darkness. Let's go! Like, it's so good. It's so good. So, it's a quick read, but it'll stay with you forever. Said the Shotgun to the Head by Saul Williams. Go buy it. Pick it up somewhere. Do it. Do it. And before we start cracking into the top 5, we have our number 6 pick. I think people might be a little surprised by how low this is, but it's my list. Make your own list. You don't have to agree with me. You just, let's talk about it. Let's chat it out in the comments. Leave it in the comments. Number 6 is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. This novel was one of the first books that really made me identify as a book person, as a person who reads a lot of books. It was my first Vonnegut and it sort of spawned my whole love of him. Like, I have quite a few of his novels because this dude just like cranked them out, and they're all good to great in my opinion. But the story of Billy Pilgrim becoming unstuck in time and sort of experiencing different snapshots of his life, both the great things that happened to him and the awful things that happened to him and the weird things that happened to him. Like, it's so quintessentially Vonnegut, and it really gets at the heart of human nature in a lot of ways. Vonnegut's ability to bounce seamlessly between hilarious and absolutely heartbreaking is unparalleled, in my opinion. His repeated use of the "so it goes" motif within this novel at times make you laugh so hard. And then other times, it's the most emotionally damaging 3 words that you can imagine, because they're so perfectly placed and the motif is so wonderfully set up that it pays off so well. This novel is based in part on Vonnegut's own experiences during World War II. He was present for the firebombing of Dresden, which was, like, I hesitate to say one of the worst things that happened in World War II, because there were so many bad things that happened in World War II. But I will say it stands out in a history of terrible that the firebombing of Dresden was particularly horrifying. And only Kurt Vonnegut could inject time dimension seeing, fourth dimensional aliens into a story about World War II and the firebombing of Dresden and have it absolutely work, absolutely be hilarious, and absolutely lay you out with emotion. It's so good. All right, now we're cracking into the top 5. Let's go. Coming in at number 5 is Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector. Clarice Lispector, for my money, is the most underrated, under-talked about author of the 20th century. Like, she is on the same level as people like Faulkner, Hemingway, Joyce, Beckett. She's up there. She's up there with all those dead white old guys. And this Brazilian immigrant Jewish woman just doesn't miss. All of her novels are so good, so good. I actually just finished reading An Apprenticeship, one of the newer books of hers available in translation, and it was so good. And that one, I was like, oh, this prose is really intricate. It's really tough. It's really, like, there's so much in it. I was doing research for it because it's going to show up on TikTok. It's widely considered her most approachable novel. But back to the Near to the Wild Heart. This is, I'm just gonna say it, this is the greatest coming of age novel ever. Like, forget Catcher in the Rye, forget all those other things that we were forced to read in high school because, like, oh, this is how you feel. No. Near to the Wild Heart is just beautiful snapshots from the life of a young girl becoming a young woman, and the prose. I wish that I could understand Portuguese, that I could speak Portuguese just so I could read Clarice Lispector's novels in their original language. Because I know, as good as this translation is by Alison Entrekin, I know that as good as this translation is, something is missing. Because something always gets lost in translation. Shout out to Bill Murray. So stupid. But, like, every sentence of this novel is so expertly crafted. I cannot sing Clarice's praises enough. Whatever you read, whatever you are doing right now, find one of her novels to read. I don't care which one. This one is probably my favorite because it was the first one that I encountered, but, like, they're all so good. She has yet to miss, in my opinion. So good. So good. Did I mention she's good? Okay, so you remember how earlier I was saying that we can't ascribe the things that characters do to their authors? You remember that? Remember how I said that was going to be important? Good. Now that we're all on the same page, number 4 is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Okay. Yes, first and foremost, this book is about what you think it is about. And that's horrifying. But that is the point. That is the point. It's the point of the novel. You're supposed to be horrified with Humbert and the things that he's doing and the way that he tries to rationalize what it is that he's doing. And Humbert is a well fleshed out character. You understand that this man is horrific, but you also understand that he's a man. And that, in my opinion, makes him much more horrific. And don't worry, on the first page, the literal first page of the book, you find that he has gotten his comeuppance. So you can read this whole novel knowing like, hey, homeboy's gonna get what he deserves, right? With that in mind, the writing in this novel is just mwah, it's just amazing. It's taking the most ugly subject and casting it in the most beautiful prose that you'll ever come across, in multiple languages too, because Vladimir Nabokov, man, was that dude smart. Like, inventing words, learning other languages, fluently speaking other languages, writing in other languages. Many of his novels he wrote originally in Russian, and then either he or his son, with his supervision, translated them into other languages that he spoke fluently, including English and French, which is wild. So, what is it about this book? First and foremost, most people are aware of it because of the controversy around it, because of its subject matter, which totally makes sense. It's pretty horrific subject matter, but for it to be constantly referenced as one of the greatest novels of the 20th century with the subject matter that it has, that makes you curious. It has to make you curious if you are any sort of like adventurous, curious reader. I know I'm saying curious a lot, but please don't judge this novel before you get into it. Read it, and I promise you, you will be horrified. But next up at number 3, we've got a book as famous as it is infamous. This is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This book, on its surface, this novel is already pretty complicated and weird. It is a book about a movie, about a house, none of which really exists, but it goes to great lengths to convince you everything in this is happening, that this is a documentary, which is wild. To the point where people, including myself while I was reading, I was like, shit, is any of this real? Like, what's going on here? Like, you start doubting reality, which is incredible from any sort of novel. But it's also the reason why so many people say, and myself included, this is the only novel that they were legitimately afraid reading, because it comes out of the page. It is not confined between these covers, and it starts inhabiting the space around you, the real world around you. Ugh. And that's before it even starts really going weird, right? Ostensibly, this is a horror novel, but like the things that start happening in with the text is just incredible. You can't make heads or tails of it a lot of the time. And boy, oh, Berto, this book, I mean, it is a reading experience that everyone should have at least once. We'll say the Johnny Truant bits at the beginning are a little trying. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed, where you wish you could do away with everything outside of the Animus and just stay in the past. You really don't give a shit about Johnny Truant or any of that. You just kind of want to get through it to get to the parts about the Navenson record and the house. Stick with them. They do pay off. They do help contextualize. I will agree, Johnny is just, he's the worst part of a great book. But it's still number 3 on my list, so that tells you how much it really like upsets your reading experience. Coming in at number 2, we have one of my favorite books of all time, which I know is redundant to say, but I have to say it every time that I bring this book up because not enough people have read it. I don't care how many people have read it, not enough. This is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, and this is a beautiful novel. The story is of a fictionalized version of Ruth Ozeki herself finding a Hello Kitty lunchbox which has washed up in the Pacific Northwest following the catastrophic tsunamis that hit the Fukushima area of Japan. And inside of the lunchbox is a young girl's diary. And the diary is of a Japanese girl who is setting down everything about her life in preparation of taking her own life. And the ruthless bullying that this poor girl goes through will be difficult for some people to read. If you can read that sort of stuff without endangering your mental well-being, this novel will stay with you forever. The way that it incorporates itself into In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust it's just a masterwork. It's so good. Like, I'm definitely not giving it justice as my number 2 pick. I'm just kind of rambling, and that's okay because I feel so many big feelings about this novel, and I know you will too. So if you haven't read A Tale for the Time Being, do it. And last, we have our number 1 pick. In my opinion, the greatest novel of all time. Definitely my favorite reading experience. It's not an easy reading experience because it's a beefy boy, beefs in the chat. This is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This novel messed me up in so many different ways. The characters in it are so... I haven't read this novel. I haven't reread this novel in 15 years. I still remember the names of all of the important characters. I remember their personalities. I remember their struggles. I remember their wins. I remember their losses. And I remember how they made me feel. All that is enough to make this a number 1. But on top of it, and I know this may not be the correct translation that a lot of people told me about, but like the writing is just so beautiful. Like, yes, Russian writers like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky can be a little wordy. I mean, look at that, right? But I would argue to read this novel in abridgment, if that's a word, is a crime against literature because it needs to be this long. It needs to sprawl out. It needs to give you the full picture of this family and the world that they occupy and the people that they interact with and who they are as people. Not to mention the fact that on top of being a great story full of the best characters of all time, there, I said it, there's so much philosophically in this novel, like Ivan's chapters where he's hallucinating, spoiler alert for a 100-year-old novel. They're some of the best philosophical explorations of belief, atheism, morality. It's so good. And then Alexei, Alyosha, he is such a wonderful person. And I try to be as kind as this character is. And I fall short, because we all will. Because, oh my God, this kid, mwah. Yeah, it's amazing that he and his brother Dmitri grew up in the same house because of how disparate they are. So yeah, The Brothers Karamazov, my favorite novel of all time. My top 10, I'll put them here real quick so you can see it if you haven't seen it yet. If you haven't taken notes, if you're not taking notes. And they'll definitely be down in the description of this video. So my friend, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for being here. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you somehow stumbled across this without having subscribed, please do. Follow me on TikTok at GenInsight. Follow me on Instagram at Gen_Insight because someone else had my name. And hey, I'm toying with the idea of posting more here. It really just comes down to, do I have the time? But we'll see. So I hope to see you next time, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Love you.